Okay, so we've all had that feeling, right? You're standing there in the beauty aisle, like completely overwhelmed by, serums and sheet masks and those
Hmm.
jade rollers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, do I really need all this?
Right.
But so imagine this, okay? You walk into a store and like half of it is filled with brands you've never even heard of. And that's basically the reality in China right now. And what we're going to be diving into today with this article, foreign versus domestic cosmetic brands, marketing strategies in China. It's a battle out there for your like hard-earned cash. And the thing is those unfamiliar names,
Yeah.
all those brands you've never heard of,
Yeah.
those are the ones that are winning over Chinese consumers right now. And so you probably heard like whispers of this whole C beauty thing. That's C for China, just so you know. Well, it's not just a trend anymore, okay? This is like a tidal wave. Get this. Local Chinese brands now own a whopping 56% of their market, over half.
Yeah.
We're not talking about some gradual takeover here either. Their market share has doubled. In the past 5 years alone, doubled. So what's the secret? What's going on? Is it just like hometown pride? Or is there something more to this whole sea beauty craze?
Well, I think national pride is definitely a part of it. But I think ultimately, like all of us Chinese consumers are drawn to brands that speak to them personally.
Sorry.
It's about finding brands that give you those aha moments where a product just gets you and your lifestyle and even like the tiniest details of your routine. Local brands just have that home court advantage in tapping into those feelings, I think.
Totally. It's like they know the struggle is real when it comes to like humid summers or finding that perfect shade of foundation for different skin tones, right? All those things that maybe a global brand might miss. But, this article also mentioned pricing strategies as like a major win for these local brands, right?
Yeah, definitely. Local brands often have much leaner production models and shorter supply chains, which means they can offer really competitive prices without having to compromise on quality. And in a market as fast-moving and dynamic as China, where trends change really quickly, that agility is super crucial. They can adapt to like what's hot right now and then get that product onto the shelves way faster than their international competitors.
So they're always kind of one step ahead of the game. But it's not just about affordability, though, right? I mean, the article really highlighted how C beauty brands have mastered the whole digital marketing game,
Yeah.
especially on platforms like WeChat and Douyin. What are they doing that's so different?
I think it comes down to this. It's not just about being online, it's about crafting a whole digital experience that's
Yeah.
like tailored to how Chinese consumers are actually using these platforms. So think like live stream shopping events with like really charismatic hosts, user-generated content that feels really authentic and relatable, and tons of partnerships with like virtual influencers who are basically celebrities in their own right on platforms like Douyin.
It's like they're building this whole digital universe where you can like hang out and get advice from your friends, or at least people who feel like your friends, and then you can buy stuff all without leaving the app. No wonder they're winning.
For sure. It's a smart strategy. And speaking of friends, we can't forget about the power of KOLs.
Right.
Yeah.
The KOLs, the key opinion leaders, we know they're like influencers. What makes them different from like the ones that we're used to seeing?
Imagine this. Okay. A KOL recommends a product and their followers don't just hit like they go out and buy it like right away, often right then and there during the live stream.
Wow.
That's the level of trust and engagement we're talking about. They're not just showcasing a product, they're sharing their lives, their values, and building these deep, genuine connections with their followers.
Wow. It's like that friend whose recommendations you trust blindly. If they say it's good, you believe them. And this article talked about Florasis, a brand that is absolutely killing it right now. It seems like they've really nailed this whole cultural connection thing.
They really have. They've tapped into this deep well of Chinese heritage, using traditional ingredients and aesthetics, even storytelling inspired by these ancient beauty rituals. Imagine this. Okay, you unbox a lipstick, but it looks like a piece of art. And it has this whole story to go along with it. It's not just makeup, it's like a statement.
It's like holding a piece of history. No wonder people are obsessed. But what about the big international players? Have they just thrown in the towel in the face of all this?
Not necessarily. They still have a certain allure, like that passport to global trends kind of feel.
Yeah.
But
But it sounds like they need a serious game plan to stay relevant.
exactly. And thankfully, this article gives us some great insights into how they can adapt.
Okay, let's unpack this. So what's the playbook? Like, how do these international brands even compete with something as massive as C beauty?
Well, I don't think it's about competing on the same terms. The key is adaptation. And this article actually highlights some really smart strategies for doing just that. For starters, they've got to embrace the whole digital landscape. We're talking about going way beyond just, having a WeChat or a Weibo account. They've got to really understand how to actually use these platforms effectively.
So no more like generic social media posts.
Exactly. They have to create content that really resonates with Chinese consumers. And that often means working with those local influencers, the KOLs we were talking about earlier. They need someone to help them bridge that cultural gap.
Looks like they need a crash course in how to speak sea beauty. But it's not just about marketing, though, is it? This article also mentioned that product customization is really important.
Absolutely. I mean, what works in Paris or New York might not work at all in Beijing or Shanghai. Take skincare, for example. This article talked about how a lot of Western brands have had to completely reformulate their products, like just for the Chinese market, addressing things like sensitivity to certain ingredients or even just preferences for lighter textures.
Wow, so it's like they're tailoring like a bespoke suit or something. Every detail matters.
Yeah.
Do you have any like favorite examples of brands that are really nailing this whole adaptation thing?
Oh, yeah, for sure. L'Oreal is a great example. They've been crazy successful with launching these Chinese-inspired brands like Yusai, which draws on like traditional Chinese medicine and ingredients. And they've also been super smart about leveraging WeChat mini programs to offer things like personalized beauty consultations and even like AR-powered try-on
Well,
experiences.
I've talked about meeting consumers where they are, and it sounds like Estee Lauder is another brand that's really figuring out how important that local touch is.
Yeah, for sure. They've invested a ton in really understanding the Chinese market. They've even built research and development centers in China just to create products specifically for Chinese skin types and preferences. And their use of WeChat mini programs for things like booking in-store appointments or joining loyalty programs has been really successful.
It's not just about slapping a new label on an old product, then, is it? It's about showing a real understanding of and like respect for these local needs and preferences.
Exactly. It has to be authentic. And you know what's really interesting is this whole idea of collaboration between foreign and local brands.
Collaboration. Wait, so instead of battling it out, they're joining forces. That's pretty cool. Tell me more.
It's a win-win for everyone, really. Foreign brands get access to all this local expertise and those really important distribution channels, and they get a much deeper understanding of the Chinese consumer. And then on the other hand, Chinese brands can benefit from the technology and innovation and the global reach of these huge international companies.
So instead of this whole sea beauty versus the world thing, it's more like sea beauty and the world
Mm.
working together. I like it. Do you have any examples of how this is actually playing out in the real world?
Well, take a look at platforms like Tmall, for example, one of the biggest e-commerce players in China. They've actually been facilitating these collaborations. They totally recognize how valuable this hybrid approach can be, and they're creating opportunities for brands to connect and create some really interesting partnerships.
So what can we expect to see from these beauty power couples?
We're already seeing things like joint ventures and co-branded products, even knowledge sharing when it comes to things like ingredient sourcing or sustainable practices.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. Is this just a temporary truce? Or could this collaboration signal some kind of real shift in the global beauty landscape?
Now that is the million-dollar question.
So are we witnessing like the dawn of a new era in beauty? One where the lines between, local and global are kind of getting all blurred together?
It's definitely possible. Just imagine a world where your beauty aisle isn't just like a bunch of brands, but like a passport to global beauty trends, a fusion of like the best of what the East and the West have to offer.
I'm ready. Sign me up. But this whole idea of cultural exchange in beauty, it's not just about like pretty packaging or like exotic ingredients, right? It feels like something bigger is happening.
Oh, for sure. This trend really speaks to a much larger shift in like consumer consciousness. People want authenticity. They crave connection and a deeper understanding of different cultures. And what better way to experience that than through something as like personal and expressive as beauty?
It's like when you discover a new band that you've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And suddenly like a whole new world of music opens up to you.
Totally. And for businesses, I think it means understanding that today's consumer, especially those super influential Chinese consumers, they're not just buying a product, they're buying into a whole story, like a set of values, a sense of belonging, even.
So you can't just like translate a label or change up a product's formula.
Yeah.
You have to connect on a much deeper level. It sounds like a challenge, but also like a really exciting opportunity.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. It's pushing everybody to step up their game, to be more innovative, more inclusive, and more globally minded.
Yeah.
And for consumers, it opens up all these possibilities to like discover and explore and express themselves in totally new ways.
It's a win-win for sure. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the rise of sea beauty to how global brands are adapting and even this really cool shift toward collaboration. So as we wrap up our deep dive here, what's the one key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with today?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think if there's one thing to remember, it's that the future of beauty is fluid. It's dynamic and it's constantly evolving. So whether you're a brand trying to figure out this crazy landscape or just a consumer who loves exploring the world through their beauty routine, the key is to stay curious, be adaptable, and open to new possibilities because who knows? The next big thing in beauty could be right around the corner, inspired by a culture you haven't even discovered yet.
Such a good point. This deep dive has really been eye-opening. And I don't know about you, but I'm so ready to embrace this whole global beauty revolution. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep exploring.